One of the biggest concerns that anyone has whenever they're starting a business is what happens if this business fails. The reality is businesses fail all the time, and Turo is no exception. And Turo hosts fail and go out of business for a variety of different reasons. And today we're going to be breaking down a few of those reasons and I'm going to be going over how you can avoid them. So let's get started. But before we dive into that, I do want to remind you guys that I have a course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, that teaches you how to start and scale your car sharing fleet with the exact same business model that I use and that I have been using since 2017. The Car Sharing Masterclass goes over everything from A to Z that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet. We'll teach you how to make your business as semi-passive as possible, how to navigate damage claims and total losses, insurance, business and LLC information accounting, as well as everything in between. Not only do you receive over 7 hours worth of course content, but you'll also be invited into our private Discord group and our monthly private Zoom calls where myself, my husband HP, and our course members join to discuss all things car sharing. And I am so incredibly confident with the quality of education that you'll receive with the Car Sharing Masterclass that we offer a 30-day robust no questions asked money back guarantee. That way you can sign up at no risk to you. And so if you're interested in checking out the Car Sharing Masterclass, you can use the code OFFER100 to get $100 off. The link is down in the description below. So one of the first and really the most simple reasons as to why some Turo hosts fail is that it comes down to them simply not following the terms of service. And this is a real shame because truthfully, this failure is so incredibly easy to avoid. Now, if you've ever seen any of my videos or if you've spent any length of time researching Turo and car sharing, chances are you have heard of the Turo terms of service, and you may even be aware of the fact that you really need to read this before you get started with Turo and car sharing. Now, the Turo terms of service isn't like Apple or Samsung terms of service. It's not something that we've all seen, but very few of us have read. Because I'm not sure about you, but I certainly haven't read the terms of service for my phone or really any of the services that I use on a daily basis. But I have read the Turo terms of service multiple times. The Turo terms of service offers you guidance and basically everything you need to know about being a Turo host, and it outlines all of the rules that you must follow in order for you to be protected. And within the terms of service, you can find info like how and when to take check-in photos, how to file damage claims, policies for smoking or cleaning fees, the whole 9 yards. Whenever a Turo host comes to me, which admittedly has happened less frequently over the years, I have had dozens and dozens of people reach out to me directly to tell me how Turo screwed them over. These stories are relatively all similar. A guest wrecked their car, Turo didn't protect them, and now this person is extremely frustrated. But the truth is, in the vast majority, if not in every single one of these instances, the reason why Turo denied coverage is because of the fact that these people didn't follow the terms of service. And whenever these types of instances happen, whenever a host loses money because Turo denied their claim because this host didn't follow the terms of service, more often than not, at least in my experience, these hosts end up deeming Turo no longer worth it and they end up quitting it altogether. Not following the terms of service is one of the easiest and quickest ways to fail at Turo, but it's also one of the easiest to avoid. And that is ultimately why if anybody is ever interested in joining Turo, I recommend reading the terms of service very first so that you know exactly what is expected from you. Another major killer for Turo businesses is high overhead. And truthfully, this isn't just a Turo problem, this is a business problem. High overhead kills businesses. It's as simple as that. And with Turo, this happens all the time. I know of many hosts over the years who have opened up with extremely large fleets, but due to large staff, fancy offices, warehouse, and shops, they end up closing. Or alternatively, new hosts who rent out a shop or hire help too soon, and thus they're never able to grow because they get choked by overhead too early. And as a result, they aren't able to grow or they end up losing money. Most of the hosts that I know who are really crushing it on Turo, who have large fleets and most importantly have longevity on the platform, they are hosts that don't have astronomical operational expenses in relation to how much their fleet is bringing in each and every month. And ultimately, lowering your overhead as a Turo host or preventing your overhead from exploding may end up meaning that you have to do things differently than you may have liked to. I've talked about this a lot on my vlog channel, but currently my husband and I operate our Turo fleet out of our home garage. I rent a few spaces from a lot that is a few $100s a month, but my husband does all of the work on our cars from our house. This can be a pain, and we have on a number of occasions over the years felt as though we were growing out of our space too quickly, but we have continued to make it work. And the reason is because our ability to continue to make this arrangement work is ultimately one of the reasons why our fleet has been so successful. To get a space that would work for our needs, it would easily cost a few grand per month. This means that a few grand per month is no longer going into things like new cars, new tools, or even into our own pockets so that we can buy things we want or invest it into other things. This can also apply to things like employees, financing vehicles, whatever. Overhead is a killer, and why I think this is specifically a large killer with Turo is because Turo is such a cash flow heavy business. And I believe that with new Turo hosts especially, it's very easy to confuse cash flow with profit. You're seeing the money enter your account every day or every few days and it feels good. But if you don't keep an eye on it, that money will leave just as quickly. And it's easy to, in the meantime, get ahead of yourself by buying things that you don't need or investing money that you really can't afford to invest. And so I encourage that anyone who has a Turo fleet who may be unsure how to go about expanding your Turo fleet to go about this in a creative way. Don't rent out a full-fledged parking lot. Instead, figure out an arrangement where you could rent out a few spaces. Don't rent an office. Instead, work from your home. And at the very beginning, be very cautious about hiring help. Make sure that you look at this very strategically and you make sure that this is an investment, not purely a cost. And don't take the step into investing into these purchases until you're 100% sure that it makes sense. In the case of HP and I, we didn't start looking at making large investments into our Turo fleet outside of buying cars until we made sure that we were able to pay ourselves, we were contributing to things like our savings and retirement funds, and we knew for 100% certainty that we could start taking on these additional expenses like an employee. Obviously, expenses are part of any business and overhead is unavoidable. And I'm not saying that you should never hire an employee, you should never get a shop, you should never get an office. But what I am saying is that you should approach these purchases and investments extremely strategically, and you definitely shouldn't rush into it, especially if you are someone who is just getting started. Another reason why Turo hosts fail is that they buy cars that depreciate. Like a lot. Depreciation is a silent killer, and the problem with it is that once it comes for you, it's pretty much too late, and you either have to bite the bullet, you're going to lose a ton of money, or you simply have to keep the car. Where Turo makes a ton of sense, at least in my opinion, is whenever you buy cars that have already depreciated, and thus you can essentially own these cars for free or at an extremely low cost. Like my business model. My entire business model is buying cars that have hit their depreciation bottom. I own these cars until they either get totaled or they need to be sold, and because I buy them at the depreciation bottom, when I get rid of these cars, I'm able to sell them for a similar price, if not higher than what I actually bought them for. And I have dozens of examples of this. But the most recent example is my Toyota Yaris. I bought this car in 2022 for $5,300. It was totaled last month and I was paid out $6,500. I made $1,200 off the car itself, and it also made money each and every month it was rented. Or there are also examples of whenever I've sold cars. Now, I don't sell cars that often, but a couple of years ago I sold my Ford Fusion because it started having mechanical issues, and because I bought it at such a good price, I was actually able to sell it for the exact same price, which meant that my entire ownership was free. And of course, we still made money off of the car itself whenever it was being rented. But whenever you buy cars that are heavily depreciating cars, you're not able to make money off the vehicle itself if it's totaled or if it needs to be sold. You're going to be lucky if you even are able to break even, and in most cases, you're going to actually lose money. For an example, let's take a look and compare something like my Toyota Yaris to a newer vehicle that would have a higher purchase price and more to fall for depreciation. The purchase price of my Toyota Yaris was $5,300. Let's say on average that the Yaris made $850 per month for 24 months. That comes out to a total of $20,400 in lifetime revenue, or lifetime earning. This car was totaled 2 years later, and the actual cash value of that vehicle was $6,500, which means that between the actual cash value at the point of the total loss compared to the purchase price, I ended up making a profit of $1,200. Which means that the lifetime earnings for this vehicle ended up coming out to $21,600 across the 2-year period of time. On the flip side, we have a newer vehicle, let's say something like 35 grand. Now, we can expect that from an earnings perspective, a $35,000 car should make more than a Toyota Yaris. While that isn't always the case, we're going to pretend like it is the case for this video, and this car has made on average $1,500 per month for 24 months, which comes out to $36,000 in lifetime earnings. Similar to the Toyota Yaris, this car ended up getting totaled 2 years or 24 months in, and at the point of the total loss, this car was now worth $22,750. This is a 35% value decline or depreciation since the point of purchase, which is the average for a vehicle today in 2024 for 2 years. This is value that you lost on the car in your 2 years of ownership, so you actually have to deduct it from the total revenue of that car over that 2-year period of time, which means that your $36,000 in lifetime revenue now becomes $23,750. Now, this This is, of course, just barely scratching the surface because it doesn't take into account things like your car payment, your insurance, vehicle maintenance, all of those types of things, which absolutely matter as well. But I wanted to draw this out because I do think that it sends a really valuable message that depreciation matters. And you absolutely have to understand how depreciation works in the context of Turo, car sharing, and vehicles. Because at the end of the day, depreciation does eat away from your profit. And you have to be prepared for that. Now, the reality is there are tons of hosts out there that rent newer vehicles and they absolutely crush it. But you know what the difference is between a host that is crushing it with new vehicles versus one that isn't? It really comes down to a matter of how you account for that depreciation. Seasoned hosts that know how to work the system, that know how to rent out cars, they are taking into account depreciation every single month with their vehicles, and they know when to strategically let go of a vehicle to make sure that the depreciation doesn't kill them. They prepare for it, they account for it, and they're aware of the depreciation, which is a big difference. But on the flip side, newer hosts, and I've seen this happen firsthand time and time again, they buy a newer vehicle, they list it on Turo, they're making a ton of cash, that cash gets put in their pocket, they end up spending it, and then whenever something ends up happening with that vehicle, whether it gets totaled or if they have to sell it, they end up being severely upside down on that car because the car has depreciated more than they thought it would during that period of time. I also think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding with some new hosts in how the Turo total loss system works, because over the years, I have had a lot of people reach out to me directly and say, hey, I thought that Turo would reimburse me what I paid for the vehicle if it was totaled, but they're only paying me X amount of dollars and I actually owe $5,000 more. Or whatever the case is. The point is that this is a problem that I think specifically plagues newer hosts, and it is a problem that can be a really bad scenario to be in if you're not aware of depreciation. You end up listing a new car and it puts you in an underwater situation. In fact, I would argue that with Turo, this is one of the worst case scenarios that you can be in because there is nothing worse than being severely upside down on a car that you're not able to pay for. These are, in my opinion, the key reasons as to why Turo hosts fail, and I truly believe that if you pay attention to these factors and if you're aware of them, you will exponentially increase your chances of being successful in Turo yourself. Remember, cash flow isn't profit, earnings aren't profit, and revenue isn't even profit. If you keep track of your expenses, keep overhead low, follow the terms of service, and you're aware on how depreciation is impacting your cars and you're able to prepare for that, you'll be in a strong spot as a Turo host. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.